pictures here. A few of these things.
Tell you what, let's get an extra one for pass on to Alton, unless y'all are gonna pass one on, dude.
No, you guys can have all these, and I'm gonna work off of one, but I'll leave you that one too. So when I'm done with it. All right. So what I want to do is talk a little bit about what this thing is, and then we're going to show you how to check on a few things, and then we're going to talk about the way that the set points are set up in it, just so you know. But realistically, at the end of the day, you should not have to do much with this at all. That's the goal.
And your name again, just so they all know?
Chad Daneman with Aquapure.
Thank you.
Okay. And so if you look at the bottom slide on the first page of this, what you see is that this filter that you have inside here has all the components that it needs to operate inside of the box. It's got two sides to it. The front side is the filter side with a drum, so that the part toward the front of the picture is the filter drum.
That's what's facing that.
And that's what's facing this way. And then the back side is the what we call the waste side or the vacuum side. So this filter is specifically designed for lower flow water treatment plants, wastewater plants. And the reason that we use air in this, we use a sort of an industrial shop vac air-driven cleaning system, is because you don't always have water coming through the filter when you need to clean it. And a dirty filter is not your friend. You got to keep the filter clean. Okay, and so this is set up to be able to clean itself without the use of water, and that's key because you don't always have water. All right. So if you turn one page, we'll talk about just how this works real quick, and then we'll go through a few things with the machine, and we'll be in pretty good shape. So if you look at the upper photo here, what you have there is you have a picture of a filter that's cut in two ways, 90 degrees to itself. That's the same filter, but cut in two different directions. And when water starts to flow through, it floods the tank around the filter drum. So this is what they call an outside to inside filter. It fills around the drum, and then the water percolates through the drum, through the cloth on the drum, and goes inside of the drum. Inside the drum is the filter water, and that runs out by gravity and into your UV systems. All right, so essentially what we've set up here is a strainer. Okay, that filter cloth is a lot like a really, really good paint roller or like a floor polisher. It will hold a lot of water and it will hold a lot of soil, like a lot of dirt. Okay, and so what happens as we use the filter, you see a blue line on there, it says low. And when we first start putting water through, it only needs to come up to the bottom of that pipe where it rolls out by gravity, and that's all that happens. It will run out into your UV system. As that filter cloth gets dirty, it will plug up. The dirt will plug up the filter cloth, and the water level inside the filter will rise. So it will come up toward the top of the drum. And when it does that, there's some level controls in the front of that machine. It will bump into the level controls. It's going to turn on the vacuum system, and it's going to turn on a gear motor. The drum is going to rotate, and then if you look at the photo on the left side, we're going to generate a vacuum on the left side of the filter, which in this case is the part against the wall, and that's tethered to a cleaning head that's riding on top of the cloth. And so as that drum rotates, and we've got this industrial shop vac going, it's going to extract all the entrapped water from the cloth, and with it's going to come the solids. Okay, and so we're going to remove the solids, and the water level is going to drop back down to the low level. Okay, and this happens all by itself. Okay, the waste that's removed from the cloth falls into the bottom of the tank at the back, the bottom of the waste tank. In that waste tank, there's a small pump, and that pump's going to pick it up, and it pumps it out through this insulated line up to the top of your plant, back into the plant, so refill it. But it's a very small volume. In this filter, it's only maybe less than a gallon when it cleans itself. Okay, so but it's gonna take it back to reprocess that 1 gallon.
Explain to me what that pipe was that's been put up there.
Right. So that's where the waste is. The reason it's insulated is there's a check valve on that pump, and because we're going uphill, that's going to sit there with standing water in it. And if you get cold enough, obviously it's going to freeze. So hence the reason the heat tracing and the insulation was put in to make sure that water will flow. Okay. There is also inside this filter a valve that's at the bottom of the filter tank that short circuits over to that waste pump. Okay. And that valve is also set up to periodically open and suck any semi-settled solids off the floor of the filter and take them to the pump and run them and put them out through that line. Okay, so you got two types of water that can go out of the filter. One's the vacuum extraction, and the other one is a solids removal line that kind of takes settled solids off the floor of the filter. Okay. In its normal mode, cleaning will bump into the level control, it will clean. You guys don't need to do anything. Also set up in this is a periodic timer. Okay, and so the timer's always running in the background, and because this is a low flow plant, if it doesn't call to clean because of the level control, the timer is going to trigger a cleaning event, because clean filter's your friend, dirty filter's your enemy. So we got to clean. If we don't have enough water and dirt to clean, we're going to clean anyway based on time. Okay, so you might be out here, there might be no water flowing, and that thing, but if it's the timer, it's going to clean itself.
Don't panic because it kicked on.
Don't panic because it kicked on, right? And so that timer will go back to 0, whether it cleans itself based on the timer or whether it cleans itself based on the level control. The timer will go back to 0 and start to count. We're going to set that timer up probably to clean about every 4 hours. So it's going to clean itself every 4 hours. Middle of the night, no flow. Everybody goes home for Thanksgiving, no flow. It's still going to clean itself. Doesn't have to have water in the filter tank. Doesn't make any difference.
Cool.
Okay? But we'll keep that cloth clean. So when you do need water to go through the cloth will be clean and healthy and ready to go. Okay? The first thing that we probably ought to do with this is we're going to come over here and I'm going to show you guys. We're going to go to the last page. I'm going to go backwards. I'm going to go to the top slide on the last page, the diagnostic mode. Okay. So anytime that you want to start to check something in this filter, if you suspect that you've got a mechanical problem, okay, this is where you start to go to look for this. And what we might do for something like this, go ahead. Okay. So with this, what we do is we get to a main screen. You have an auto button, which is green, and an off button, manual mode, process functions, set points, diagnostic. Okay, so when we go to the diagnostic, these are the diagnostic outputs, and so this allows us to toggle motors on and off. And so in this case, we got the panel outside and away from the filter, but if I were to turn something on, I'll pick one we can hear. So if I turn on the vacuum, I can hear the vacuum running. So now I know that vacuum's running. You guys, because of the way this is set up, you might need you out here and Roger in there to say, okay, I can hear that one, but I can hear everything that's going on. I can turn on the motor, and even if I just wanted to, I can go around now and look and see if the motor's turning. I can open up a waste valve, and if you're in there, you'll be able to hear the waste valve turn.
So actually that vacuum and motor you just turned on was inside this building.
It was in the filter.
Because when I heard that vacuum come on, it sounded like it was coming from above me. But I heard it come on from out here.
That's right. Okay, so you can turn these things on and off. You don't have a CIP pump in your filter. That's an option that you don't need with this kind of plant, so you don't have that. Okay. So this is the way you can manually turn stuff on and off, control the filter. If you came out here and you said, something's not right. Let's say a worst case scenario, which isn't the end of the world, because you have an overflow line in your filter. Something's gone wrong. The water's going through the overflow of the filter when you check it. Okay, so the first thing you're going to do is you're going to bypass your filter with your hose, and then you're going to come and you're going manual mode, and you're going to turn on the waste pump, and you're going to pump out the tank. And And so between turning on the pump manually and opening the valve, you can get the water out of the filter and start to figure out what's going on.
We won't need to. It's still fine to leave all the UVs on and everything
Right.
as we're doing that. You know?
That's right. That's right. So, but then you can check all these diagnostics to see if something, if you're having a problem. Why am I having a problem? Is something not turning? Is something not coming on? And you can start to look by just toggling them on and off and seeing if it's working out. The next screen, if you use the arrows at the top, has the diagnostic input. So the diagnostic inputs on this, there's 4 level controls. There's 2 level controls in the filter tank, a bottom one that's the working one, and a top one that's a redundant, it's a backup. And so if you hit the one on the bottom, the filter will come on and it will clean. If that one gets hung up and stuck and you hit the top one, the filter will come on and clean, but you'll have an alarm here that says that it hit that top level control. And so of your daily walk around sort of thing, one of the things that you probably want to do, whether it's every day or 2 days or how often you walk around, is just come by and look and see if there's an alarm. So this screen will be asleep, you just touch it, and if there's an alarm, it'll be very prominent that there's an alarm.
And that's what I just fixing to ask you, was what's going to give us an indication that there is something going on.
Right.
But it's just by looking at that monitor and it's saying we got an alarm.
Right. And so from that standpoint, if there's no alarm, right, then it tells you that things are going pretty good. Now I'll show you in a few minutes something to look at physically inside of the filter too. But in terms of this, if there's no alarm, then it's doing what it's supposed to do. But these diagnostic inputs, you have two level controls in the filter tank. Filter tank level switch high, filter tank level switch high, and then there's an identical set of level controls in the back part where the waste pump is, and you have waste tank level switch high and waste tank level switch high. And what those are doing are they're forcing the pump on and off if we get too much water in there. Typically those switches are not engaged because we're normally running the pump based on time and cycles and other things. The last one that you have is e-stop. So if that's pushed in, then you'll see that, then it will let you know right there. And same thing, if I push this in, okay, I get an alarm condition, right? And so it says emergency stop. So I know now that, all right, well, I know why that's doing that. So I reset my alarm, process functions, set points, diagnostic. I come back and all those are satisfied again. They should be with
Diagnostics from separate.
yeah. And that's all mapped out in your handout here. And these should all be white. And so if you do come back here and you start to look and you're having an unusual situation, you get to the screen and you see one of them's green, that means one of them's stuck in an up position, essentially what it means. So you know now, well, maybe that's the root of my problem. Go over there. Is it clogged, stuck with oil or grease, or somehow hung up, with a chunk of debris or that sort of a thing. But like I said, you can go through and check all the motors. I've done that this morning to make sure that things come on and off and whatnot. And not something you need to do every day, but maybe it's something depending on how you guys like to run preventative maintenance programs and record keeping. Maybe it's a once a month or once a quarter thing that you come through and say, let me turn these things on, record that they're all working. It's your choice. But certainly if you're having a problem, that's a place to go, because if you have a component that's not working, then you know that probably is what's causing you the problem. Main. So we go to main. We need to be in automatic. Okay, for this to run automatically, we got to be in automatic. So that's the green button on, and with that, all the set points for the machine are in place.
When you come out of set points, that it won't be on. You're going to have to manually turn it back on.
Right. So this has to be green when you walk away and you expect it to do its job on its own. You got to have that green. If you have it
turn to the other side.
If you have it gray and you walk away, when you come back, it's just going to be sitting there, probably with water flowing out the overflow. So you have to have it in automatic for it to be in automatic. there's timers and counters. Okay, these right now, short of us toggling motors on and off, are all set at zeros. Again, these are not something that you need to look at on a regular basis. Okay, we track these things. That if you called us up in a year or 3 years, and you said, hey, we went over and we had a problem, we went to diagnostic screen, we saw the waste pump's not working, we might ask you, can you tell us how many cycles it ran and how many hours are on it? It's a piece of information we get in terms of, did that component live up to our expectations or not, or did it seem to do something, like did it seem to have a factory fault or a shorter life than anticipated, or for the amount of time it's been in service, did it seem to have a lot more time on it than we might have anticipated, which might tell us that we need to push set points or other things in a different direction. And so, just a helpful piece of information, but generally speaking, no reason to really look in there. And again, unless you want to come through on a monthly basis and just report numbers, you know,
Keep up with it.
yeah, because if you keep up with it, one thing that doing that will do for you, if you said once a month, I'm going to write down how many cycles for each of these components and how many hours. If you saw that month one, the drive motor ran 100 cycles, and then month two it was at 200 cycles, meaning that it had run 100 cycles more. Right, more. And then month three it was at 300 cycles, so it ran 100 more. And then if you came in month 6 and you saw that it had run 700 cycles, it would tell you something's changed, right? So by looking at those numbers, you know, on a monthly basis, if you see all of a sudden that for some reason they think seems to be cycling more frequently, the reason things cycle more frequently
It's being used more.
right, which means that your filter's getting 30, right? Because it's going to call itself to clean more frequently if it starts to get dirty. So that can be an indicator that you're starting.
People being in, people being out of the field.
Yeah. So, you know, it could be because you might come back after Christmas, right? And you're probably going to see that it's run too many times because it's on the timer. It will run that many cycles. But maybe when everybody comes back in,
Because there ain't nothing wrong, it's just doing its job.
right. So, but you can watch that and see, you know, if something really for no apparent reason started to cycle more, that tells you that your filter's kind of getting dirty and that some adjustments might be needed. Okay. But they're all there. Drive motor, vacuum motor, waste pump, waste valve. CIP pump will always be zero because you don't have one. And then power on and off if you want to come and see. If the power goes out here, this will wake up doing whatever it went to sleep doing. So if it was an automatic,
It'll still be on.
it will still be an automatic. Okay. If
You
it
have a generator, I assume it's hooked up to the generator.
It's hooked up to
Yeah.
all the power
So, but
stuff.
if you have a blank,
But it's gonna take a few
right. So
seconds.
if it's in manual, you know,
It's gonna
it's
do
going to
it
be in
fine.
manual. It's not going to come back in automatic. Whatever it was doing, and it will remember its set points. Okay. The process functions then. So what this does is it starts to get into set points about how we're operating the filter. It has some timers that will tell us based on the time that we have in there, the periodic timers. It will tell us when the next event's going to happen. So if I wanted to look and say when the next time that I'm going to have a clean, it's right now it says it's going to
3
clean
hours,
itself
2
in
minutes.
3 hours and 2 minutes. Okay, so I've
had it set up for every 4 hours, right?
I've got it set up for every 4 hours to clean itself. Okay, and so it will give you that kind of information. Again, you can look, like if you're curious, you come here and you say, wonder when the last time it cleaned itself was. You can look and it will give you some indication. It's set at 4 hours. It will tell you 3 hours left. It did it an hour ago. Or if you're saying, I wonder, you know, is it going to do it soon? You can look. It might say it's going to do it in 10 minutes, and you can wait and see does it do it as expected, right? So you can look at the cleans with that. With the cleans come really the waste, which is the pump on the back. That's tied to the cleaning cycle. Okay, what that's saying is it's going to pump that waste every cycle. The way we have this set up. It'll also tell you that the level switches in the pumps are okay, and there's no high level alarms. And purge. Purge is the valve I told you about. If you look in the bottom corner here, see this control valve? Okay. So what that does is that short circuits the filter tank over to that waste pump in the back. And so what this is saying, I've got this turned on, and every hour that valve is going to open for 30 seconds, and it's going to drain by gravity. There's a little perforated sludge manifold across the bottom of the filter tank. so it's gonna, there's solids that are kind of floating around on the bottom there. It's gonna suck some of those out. That pump's gonna come on and it's gonna push those out the line back up to the top of the plant. 30 seconds later, the valve's gonna close and that's over for another hour. Now, I've got that, you can change that. Make it once an hour, once every 2 hours, once every 3, 4, 8 hours, any number you want up to, I think, 24 hours. Small plants like this, we like to keep that frequency high. The reason we want to do that is because you don't have a lot of flow, which means not a lot of flow means not a lot of turbulence, means more settled solids typically. And so because it's a more or less turbid environment, you tend to build up solids more in the bottom of the filter, and we want to keep moving those out as often as we can. The other reason is that when the filter does clean itself, the solids that are in it can be kind of thick, and so they're going to be in this line. And so we want to keep flushing cleaner water through this line once an hour to keep that stuff from cementing in. Right?
I'm gonna take it like a preset investment.
Right. So it's going to run every hour, and you know, in fact, it just ran, right? Because it says, yeah. So 6 minutes ago it ran, and you didn't even know that it happened.
I guess they're going to want a quote to put in
So
an
that's-
automatic shut off.
So that's the.
I guess they'd have to come to you and then decide what we're going to do
That's the.
to shut the bulbs off.
Solids removal
Shut the
here,
bulb off.
and so you can see I have it on.
So they're gonna
Periodically,
get, I guess they'll
it's
get
gonna
all
run
the
every hour,
numbers
it's for
together
30
and
seconds.
Figure it out from
That's
there.
all there is to that valve.
Okay.
Okay. The pump comes on with it, but it calls that value, the runtime for the pump, it calls it from another point. So, set points,
What
waste.
you think?
This is the waste
What you've
pump.
heard from?
Okay, so the waste pump that's in there, that's what's pushing water through this line. Okay, every time it cleans itself, that pump's going to come on for 30 seconds. It's going to do it every time it cleans itself. Okay, and then there's level controls in that waste tank. If one of those gets hit and held up for 10 seconds, it's an indication that we're starting to get too much water in that tank, and it will lock itself out. So this is really the only thing that will shut this filter off, is getting locked out in that situation. Because if we're not clearing water out of that tank, something's not working quite the way it's supposed to. Okay? So normally, if you see an alarm, it will come back over to have something to do with this. And the reason it will do this is because your filter is dirty. That's how you get there. Okay? But it's going to do it once in a, it's every time that pump is called for cleaning or for that valve, it's going to run for 30 seconds. And one thing that we check continuously is look in that tank once a day as you come by, and you shouldn't have but more than a quarter inch of water. That pump pumps almost to the bottom. If you look in there and you got 3 inches of water, this value, the duration, we need to increase it because there's too much discharge head on the piping. Okay, so we can increase that time to try to make sure that we empty that tank out. Every field installation is a little unique due to the discharge head, but there shouldn't be. If you come by any point in time and you lift that lid and look in there down the base of that pump, there should be just a little bit of water in there because it's meant to pump empty. And if you look in and there's 4 inches of water in there, well, something's not optimized at a minimum. You're heading towards it.
Well, if we're coming down there and getting our flow meter readings every day anyway, it wouldn't be a bad idea to just pop the lid and look.
And what I would say, it doesn't hurt, but what I would say is that these next few days, first weeks, this is kind of the critical part of the startup because, we're doing this, we're going to watch it once or twice, but what it does accumulatively over the next 10 cycles or 2 days, it might be building a 16th inch at a time, right? And it's going to take it 3 days to turn into 2 inches, and then you increase this value. But we look for a little bit of overrun. So the way that I check this when I start them is we do a cycle, and then we listen to it. And when it starts to run dry, it will gurgle, and you'll hear it. You don't even have to have the lid open. You can hear it. It'll pump, and when it starts to run dry, you hear it. And then okay, well, did it do that for 10 or 15 seconds? All right, well, not a problem for the pump to run dry and gurgle a bit for 10 or 15 seconds, and just by listening, it's empty, and you should always hear that. Anytime that pump is called, you should always hear it end with a little bit of gurgling saying, I'm done. Okay? So that's waste removal. We talked about the valve solids removal. Base clean. Okay, so this is base clean. This is all about the cleaning part of the filter. So, like we talked earlier, we get solids built up on the cloth, we bump into the level control, it doesn't do, it calls the clean, right? So when we look at the timers, it's going to come up and it's going to say, well, what do I do? This makes a rotation in about 15 seconds. So we run 16 seconds. We don't want to always start and stop in exactly the same place. So it's going to run about 110% of a revolution. Okay. So that's the drive motor. There's another setting here, deep clean, which is 33 seconds. Okay, so I've got a few things turned on here we're going to talk about. But that's the same thing, like how long will it turn on the vacuum and the drive motor. We've got periodic. We talked about that. So periodic is every 4 hours, this thing's going to clean itself. And that's probably important because, quite frankly, you guys probably don't have enough water to make this thing clean itself every 4 hours most of the time. And that leads to a dirty filter. And what's a dirty filter?
Enemy.
He's good.
He's good. Okay. So by forcing this on time, and we can adjust that. We can make that 2 hours. We can make it 6 hours. 4 hours is a really good place for you guys to start. Probably never going to change it, but just keep in mind what these tools are. We don't have to know how to use them. You can always call me and we can figure that kind of stuff out, right? But just be aware of what arrows are in the quiver that we got. So we got periodic. We can increase this, make it more frequently or less frequently. We've got deep clean. I've got deep clean turned on. You can turn it off, but we're going to leave deep clean turned on because there's really no downside.
Every 5 hours.
So every 5 cycles, every time the 5th cycle, instead of going around once, it's going to go around twice. So it's like vacuuming your carpet. You're going to go, sometimes you don't get it all on the first pass. This is a catch-up pass where if we're building up a little bit of junk in the filter, this is going to hopefully get some of that extra stuff out of there and claw us back to a cleaner filter. And then every 10 cycles, it's going to change direction. So same thing, when you vacuum, you go back and forth, right? And the reason you do that because y'all been in a house or a building, right, where people go through halls one direction, and what's the carpet look like? I mean, it's hammered down, right? And so this will run 10 cycles, and then after 10 cycles, it will run 10 cycles the other direction. And then after 10 cycles, it will run 10 cycles the other direction. And what that's doing is it's keeping the fibers in that filter cloth from being matted down
One way.
and plugged up, because that makes for a dirty filter and enemies. All right. So we're combating by deep clean, periodic clean, and reverse, keeping this filter clean. And that purge off the bottom of the valve, because we're going to tend to build up stuff in the bottom of the tank because not much water moving through, so we're going to keep moving water off the bottom to keep stuff building up there. So with those set points, this thing is going to do everything it can to maintain a steady state of operation without you guys doing any more than walking by.
Checking for an alarm.
Yeah, you check for an alarm, and then you start to look and see. So the one thing I would say, there's other stuff in here about passwords and factory defaults, and none of that's really pertinent right now. This is when it comes time to, factory default lets us reset cycle counters on motors. So if you change the motor in 3 years, we want to make that counter 0, and then we can make that counter 0. It allows us to turn on and off clean in place stuff, which you don't have, but allows us to turn on that part of the program. So none of that stuff is really even really useful. That's more of a factory thing for us. Is really what it is. But that's the extent of it. So this is pretty straightforward. This stuff is mapped out. What's mapped here in your handout, and we can email this to you guys in a PDF. So we'll all lose this, right? But we can map it out, and this matches the version of the program that you have in there. There's one other thing that I'll point out is that we always have a version of a program in the bottom corner.
1.2.
Yep. So a couple years from now, you guys change, you call down, and I've been hit by a bus or whatever the case is. Somebody's going to say to you, okay, what's that? So I know that I'm looking at exactly what you're looking at. We try to keep those records straight, but you know. So that gets everybody on the same.
Most importantly, this is not a prototype. This is something else.
This is a product. No,
Well,
we're
the-
past prototype. Does it show? I hope it shows.
So on that version, just so you guys know, when he got here, he actually updated that version to the latest version that they have, and it was very straightforward. He's got a memory stick,
You got a memory stick.
and he plugged it in,
Yeah.
and he said he can download that to you if they do an upgrade down the road, and you guys can plug and play.
Yeah,
It's
so
very
what we
simple.
do is the back of this is a PLC HMI combination. So the screen and the PLC are one piece, and in the back of that there's a USB port, and we can email you an updated operating program, and we look forward, if you guys, after you run this for a while, and you say, boy, I wish I could do this or see this, send it to us. We collect feedback, and once we get about half a dozen or so things, we decide what we're going to put in the next version. We get our PLC programmer to update it, and then we run it internally for a while to make sure we don't create new bugs by changing anything. But then we send that program out, and we send it with a YouTube video of how to put it in. So in the back of that, there's a USB port. You just open it up. You have to have power on it. But you put the USB stick in, it self-loads. It's going to ask you to initiate it. You press one button. It's going to have a 4-digit code that we provide. You enter that, and it's going to load it up, and then it's going to cycle the power on and off. You pull the stick out, and you've got a new program. And when you'll know, because the program version will change, and then you'll know that you've got that. And so then it's going to tell you, we're going to obviously, we're not just going to send it to you and say, here. We're going to say, the reason that we're doing this is because we're adding this and this and this and this. Like maybe it's enhanced alarm history stuff, or maybe it's some other feature. One of the things we have on the list right now is this tells us the next time it's going to clean. And we had somebody say, well, that's nice, but how about you just give me the number? Don't make me subtract in my head. Tell me the last time that I cleaned. So the next one's going to, I said, well, that's a good point, I guess. Yeah. So that one of the things added is it's going to say the last time I cleaned was this long ago. The next time it's going to clean is this far in the future. So it's little things like that.
Make it easier for certain people.
Well, it's always good, right? Because feedback is how you make things
Better.
better. So, but that is easy to do. So with that, that's pretty much covered. What I would tell you is that the I don't know how in the way these guys are or not. Not too much. We can step back. So what I would say is the one thing when you